Seven-sided circle for those who would rather be awake than entertained.
Well, hello and welcome back. Here we are again at the little house on the end of the road, and I'm looking forward to talking with you all this evening. As usual, Kyle will be fielding questions and typing things in and doing all of that kind of incredibly important work so that I can just talk at you and not be terribly distracted. The neighborhood is very noisy tonight, so there might be some weird sounds and stuff. It's what you get in the big city. What can I say? So, let's see who all is here. Laura is here. Scott is here. Tonight is Scott's fault, by the way. So blame him for the content. He asked me a question yesterday. Is it yesterday? That seemed important enough that I figured it should become the topic for this evening's talk. And so what we are going to talk about is what the heck is the work? Why would one want to do it? And what is its relationship to Sufism and Islam? And all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, Scott. Sorry, I had to out you on this one. So, some of this is going to be things that I've talked about before, at least a little bit. And some of this is going to be things that I haven't talked about. And hopefully that will be all right if I repeat myself a little bit. That is, in fact, one of the perks of being an aged person, is that I get to repeat myself and tell my stories over and over again. And you young'uns are just going to have to shake your head and go, oh, there he goes again. So, now you're going to have to take some of this as metaphor. Or you can take it as reality, for that matter. It doesn't really matter. It's the same no matter what. So, according to legend and to the tales of the tradition, somewhere about 6,000 years ago, something really, really bad happened. It was Mr. Gurdjieff talked about it as the disaster not according to law, or it's giving it its full name, the disaster not according to law, by which men can live more or less comfortably together only as masters and slaves. That he said that all in one breath. And this is an important thing. And we can pretty much pinpoint it as this disaster happened around the time we went from a hunter-gatherer culture to an agrarian culture, when people became tied to the land as opposed to free to roam about it. And this had some good aspects and some bad aspects. The good aspects were you could create a food surplus and not starve to death as often. And that's not a bad thing. The bad aspects were that for some reason we changed the way we were in the world. And the thing that we did to ourselves, much like cats, is that we domesticated ourselves. And I have talked at some point in one of my talks, I don't remember which one, but about the idea of domestication. Domestication is basically the conservation of juvenile traits into adulthood. And the example that I use is always wolves and dogs, because that's where I first discovered this. And if sometime if Ramon ever is able to make it to one of these talks, I'm going to get him to talk a little bit about some of this stuff, or I'm going to get him on one of the interviews that we're going to do, because it's fascinating. And as I've pointed out, there basically is no difference between a wolf and a dog for the first 2 years of their lives. When you have a adolescent wolf, a wolf in its child phase, their behavior is the behavior of a dog. Identical. And wolves and dogs are so close genetically that they can breed with each other, breed true, give birth to live, healthy young that are fertile. And that means that they're really, really close, because oftentimes when you get species that are kind of close enough to produce young, what you get is mules, which are infertile offspring. But wolf-dog hybrids produce fertile offspring. So, what happens? At about between 18 months and 2 years, the wolf reaches adulthood. And when it does, its behavior changes. And it's pretty marked. The wolf goes from dog-like behavior, which is deference to what it sees as the pack leader, as the alpha in the hierarchy, which is usually the human, in cases where we're interacting them, to no deference to anyone. And this is a really interesting phenomena. An adult wolf does not defer by any kind of mechanical behavior like a dog will. An adult wolf will negotiate. They'll recognize another wolf as above them in their pack hierarchy, but it's always negotiable. Whereas dogs don't seem to do this. People do the same thing. About 6,000 years ago, we became domesticated primates. And that means that even though physically we mature, there is a part of us that doesn't, and we retain juvenile behaviors into adulthood. What you say? Or if you don't say what, you should say what. What are you talking about? What kind of juvenile behaviors? Let me give you a few examples. Following a king. Have you thought about how weird that is? And yet for almost all of our history, that's what we've done. And we do it now. If you think that Donald Trump is not the king of America in the eyes of his followers, you have not been paying attention. And the thing about a king is you have to do what he says. And it's a mechanical behavior. The king says, go invade that country over there. Everybody picks up their swords and they go over and they invade the country. Nobody stops and says, why? Why would we want to do that? Why in the world would we want to go and bother those people? They aren't bothering us. But kings get to tell you that. Kings are the alpha males of our species, and they are literally the So yes, children prefer, Scott says, people prefer to be led. And I say to you, children prefer to be led. Children must be led. And if you want to keep a populace working the fields and guarding the land and that sort of thing, the best way to do it is to keep them in a neotenous state. Yeah. The problem with this, from the point of view of those of us who would prefer to actually achieve adulthood, is that from a Darwinian standpoint, domestication is a very, very successful ploy. It is a ploy that allows the domesticated primates to take over the turf of adult human beings because of certain things. One of which is that domesticated primates will charge machine gun nests on command. Have you ever thought about how weird that is? Here you are in some country that you, with a bunch of people who you've never had any beef with, and there's a bunch of them up on top of the hill, and somebody comes up who is the appointed alpha of your group and says, run up that hill in the face of their machine guns and kill those people for me. And you do it. And not, you can give all sorts of excuses like patriotism and all of that sort of thing. And at times that has been true, but not in a long time. Not in a very long time. Now, adult human beings, if you go up to them and say, go charge that machine gun nest, they're liable to shoot you because they realize the consequences of charging a machine gun nest. Children don't. This is me, not showing you the lack of hair, but just looking at the notes that are coming in here. So, this domestication is the disaster that legend talks about. And what it has done is that it has stunted our growth as a species while allowing us to distribute our genetic materials all over the planet. So we are literally, according to this model, we are living in the world of the Lord of the Flies. Ian, I would suggest to you, Ian says, full adults can be seduced by alpha male status as well because it is a proven strategy. And I would suggest to you that that is actually not the case. A real adult does not look for alpha male status or alpha status because you can have alpha females. That is, in my experience, real adults are not seduced by that. And you can tell this because amongst the people who have reached adulthood, you don't find themselves claiming alpha status. You don't find themselves claiming titles or, great grandmaster or any of that kind of stuff. They tend to avoid that. I think that if you fall back into that, you have not actually reached adulthood. You have snuck up on it and then backed off from it. This is my theory anyway. Yeah, attracting followers is something that, again, is a juvenile trait. Followers and leaders are part of the same field. So, this is the idea of masters and slaves. That's what we have in this society right now. And the masters are not adults. Do not make that mistake. The masters in our society are not adults. They are as much children as anybody else. They are just the top of the heap. But it all follows the same pattern. Oh, Ian, don't bow to my experience. Listen to it, take it into consideration, but always bear in mind that I can be totally full of shit. I'm pretty sure I'm not, but if I thought, if I wasn't pretty sure I wasn't, I wouldn't be talking here. But it doesn't mean that I am, if that makes sense. Real adult people don't want you to bow to them. Real adults would rather have a meaningful discussion and learn from you as you learn from them. This is the nature of the beast. Yes, Laura, you are correct. Masters do not grow up. And you know that from the martial arts world. You've seen lots and lots of masters. You've been around them. And let's face it, most of them are like squabbling little children. Michael, you have said a mouthful. Michael notes that adults can mimic children to survive in a world of children. Yes. In the land of crazy people, if you act too sane, they will kill you. It's kind of the nature of the thing, which is why Mr. Gurdjieff called his methodology the way of the sly man. It's why we call what we do the way of the nomad. Because it's involved with having to be hidden from the children in society. Because right now the children have all the power. Adults do not have any power in this culture. We are a society ruled by emotional response, not by adult behavior. And if you look at it from just transactional analysis, well, it will give you the adult parent-child thing. And we go from children pretending to be parents to children pretending to be children. So, what is the work? The mythology of the way says that during this time, humanity actually split into two streams, and the greater of the streams became the masters and slaves. And the smaller of the two streams became what is usually referred to as the conscious circle of humanity. And that can take two different forms. You can think of it, if you want, as these all-powerful secret chiefs hiding out somewhere deep in the mountains who are sending out little truths from time to time and are giving visions to Madame Blavatsky and all of this kind of stuff. So, given what I've said, what do adults want? Scott asks. Adults want more adults. That's what adults want. Adult human beings don't want one thing. They want other adults they can interact with. Because otherwise, it's hard to continue on your path. So, adults do not want power. Adults have power. Adults may or may not want money. They do want, what every adult animal wants, which is a certain amount of safety, a certain amount of sustenance, all of these things. But they don't want to control others. And you see this, we have relatively contemporary examples of adult societies before they were wiped out by child societies. Some Native American societies definitely produced adult human beings, and it's one of the reasons that Native Americans and the European settlers had such problems, is because the European settlers worked from a kingship model, and the Native American societies that they encountered more often than not did not work from a kingship model here in North America. It was very rare to find that. And so consequently, this is what used to happen. And I know that this happened in the Southwest a great deal. You would go up to some group of, say, Apache. I can talk about them because I know them better than any of the other tribes. And I can tell you that this happened more than once. And you say to this group of Apache, "Who is your leader?" And they point at this guy over here. And so you go over to this guy over here and say, "I want a treaty with you." And he thinks about it and they negotiate and he says, "Sure." And so he signs the treaty. And then the Europeans go off and the guy who signed the treaty, usually sticks to the treaty, but nobody else does. And then they go back and say, "You're the chief." And he says, "Yeah. How come your people aren't following the treaty?" And he says, "Did you ask them?" And they look at him like he's crazy, because their idea is that the chief orders people to do what he wants. And in an adult society, you don't order anybody to do anything. You reach agreements with them through direct communication. And that created a lot of problems. So back to this idea of a conscious circle of humanity. Now you have the large conscious circle, which is Madame Blavatsky's secret masters, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, bullshit. There are no secret masters like that. You have the small masters theory, which are people who have reached adulthood, who have worked on themselves, who have gone beyond just adulthood to full, if for lack of a better term, enlightenment, and who do the work that they can to help and encourage others who have the proclivity to do that, to do the same thing. They are not all powerful. They can be blown up or shot or burned or killed just like anybody else. And so they must be sneaky. And in my direct experience, these people exist. And every now and then they send people out to how would you say? To drop seeds, to see what can be produced at this time, and to gather in people who are capable of making the leap, first from childhood to adulthood, and then from adulthood to full awakening. And it's necessary, because if we don't, hopefully there will at some point be a balancing. I don't know for sure, but I think that there might. But I do know that there is a certain percentage of the population at any given time that have the tendency and the desire to move from childhood into adulthood and beyond that. Beyond adulthood is full awakening. And full awakening at its greatest expression is abiding non-dual awareness, for lack of any better term. And I'm using these terms because I don't have a better way to describe it. And that's what we have. So, for longer than there has been the stream of consciousness within people that moves towards keeping people domesticated and keeping them from reaching adulthood. For longer than that, there have been human adults. And that doesn't make them good people. Adults are neither good nor bad, or any of these other things, but they do exist. And the work, when I say the work, what I mean is, 1, moving to human adulthood, leaving the childhood larval state, going through the metamorphosis just like a bug, and then emerging from your cocoon as an adult of your species. This is the first step, and it is a necessary step. Awake, abiding non-dual awareness. Yes, those two terms are synonymous in my thinking. And that requires that you basically put yourself back together. We understand that the consciousness of human beings is fragmented, broken, like a mirror dashed on the ground. And those pieces, in order to reach human adulthood, have to be put back together, have to be recombined. Your consciousness, your I, has to move from many to one. And trust me, right now you have more than one I. You think that you have one I because it's comfortable to think that, and because you have the same body sensations no matter which of your eyes is working at the moment. All of your eyes have the same name. And all of your eyes have the same basic set of habits. This is why you don't notice, unless somebody does some change work on you, that there is more than one personality of you in there. Multiple personalities are just that has been separated. So, everybody has multiple personalities, and you don't think you do, but trust me, I can take a room full of you, pick one of you, put you in a trance, and talk to various parts of you, and have conversations that have nothing to do with the part of you that you think of as your conscious I, reach agreements with them, and have them change your behavior. Because the I that you usually think of as me is not one. And the unconscious eyes have more say over what you do than you do. This is an uncomfortable thought. And yet, like I said, it's demonstrable. So, this is the thing where Scott asks, how does this relate to Steve's idea that you are not the voices in your head, you are the one listening to the voices? If you have a you that is listening to the voices, you have already put yourself on the first step in the path. Most people do not recognize a you that listens to the voices. They are just identified with the voices. The first step is to realize that the objects given to you in consciousness are not you. You are the witness to them. But because the you that is really you is identified with all of those voices as me, you don't have a permanent I. Hopefully that makes sense. So, the work, as I define it, as I said, is unifying yourself in order to reach an adult state. And then, from there, should you choose to, moving into a state of full awakeness. The way I like to break it down is an adult human being is awake in the dream. The dream is the kind of weird illusionary world that we have out there. An awake person is awake from the dream, and that is a big distinction. What creates this fragmentation? We are asked. Life creates the fragmentation. The fragmentation starts when you are not allowed to grow up. And all of us basically cease growing at puberty. So, there are a lot of models for talking about this. And I don't have time to go into all of them tonight, but I think next week I will go into my favorite models for talking about this particular thing. Fundamentally, it doesn't matter what causes it. What matters is what cures it. Life causes it, life cures it. Now, where does Sufism fit into all of this? We're about halfway through our hour, so I should address this. And specifically, where does Islam fit into all of this? So, there is this thing called Sufism, which is not one thing. Sufism is as fragmented as any human consciousness. And you find all of these different groups out there who say, we're Sufis. And they don't look alike, and they don't behave alike. And the ones that are most successful are the ones that have kings. Let me repeat that. The ones that are most successful in the world are the ones that have kings. This is going to rattle a few cages. Sufism is an expression of the work that started around the 6th century. It is one expression of the work. It is this expression that I'm most comfortable with. Islam is the religion within which Sufism hid during that time. And okay. If I mix two chemicals together, I will get a reaction. And I will get the same reaction every time I mix those two chemicals together, no matter what I believe, no matter what religion I follow, no matter how I look at the world. A chemical reaction is a chemical reaction. If I drop an object off the roof of a house, it will fall the same speed whether I am a Muslim or a Christian or a Buddhist or a Hindu or a shamanist. Gravity doesn't care. Gravity doesn't care whether I say a prayer before I drop the object. Gravity does not care whether I ask God to make the object fall faster or slower. The object will fall at 32 feet per second per second. I don't know what it is in metric. I apologize to everybody else in the world who's on the metric system. But it will fall at the same speed no matter what. There is a difference between science and belief. And there are a number of different sciences. Sufism is science, as some of us practice it. And it will be science regardless of any religious path you follow. if you do certain things, you will get certain responses. It's as the song says, you will find if you walk into a wall that you get a certain sensation of reality. So, can you be a Sufi and not be a Muslim? You cannot be a member of a traditional Islamic Sufi order and not be a Muslim. Because one of the game rules of those orders is that you are a Muslim. And I hate to say it, but to me that is neither here nor there. Because again, the object will drop at the same speed no matter what language you pray in. Does that make sense? Am I making any kind of sense to you at all? And Aaron, yes, the way is in fact in training. We will get to that. So, in the tradition, the people who are the small m masters, I like to think of them as that. Small m versus big M. The big M masters are the ones that Blavatsky was always talking with. And basically, if you find somebody who has the secret chiefs that are talking to them and not to you, and you can't meet the secret chiefs, you're kind of full of shit. Small M masters, and I dislike that term because it is so loaded, but I prefer teachers. Teachers with a small t. Some of my teachers are dead, but the ones that are alive, anybody can walk up and talk to them. They can ask them, what's what, and they will tell you if you can find them. Sometimes they don't want to be found. That's a different thing. But the other thing is that the work does not stand on external authority. Let me repeat that. The work does not stand on external authority. The work does not care what your line of transmission is. There's a thing in traditional Muslim Sufism called silsila, which means a chain. And it is the unbroken chain of teachers that goes from the teacher who's sitting in front of you all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad. And frankly, a lot of the silsilas are utter crap. I like to pick on the Naqshbandis because they are the ones who say, yes, we are special because all the other Sufi orders came from Ali and we came from Abu Bakr. But if you actually study their lineage, you'll find that 200 years before Bahauddin Naqshband, the silsila of the people who Naqshband was connected to traced their lineage through Ali, not through Abu Bakr. That was a later thing. And it doesn't matter. All that matters is you as an awake person. Can you manifest your own adulthood? If you can manifest your own adulthood, you are your own damned authority. You do not need the authority of anybody else. Can you be awake? If you can be awake, you have the same awakeness as the Buddha. You have the same awakeness as Lao Tzu. There is only one level of awakeness. There are not all of these degrees. You're either awake or you're asleep. And if you're awake, you are in the same state as Siddhartha Gautama. So, the work sends out tendrils into the world constantly. Mr. Gurdjieff was one tendril. Hazrat Inayat Khan was a tendril. Walt Whitman was a tendril. Did you know that Walt Whitman was a Sufi? Yeah, Walt Whitman was a Sufi. If you doubt this, look up a poem of his called The Persian Lesson. There are a lot of others. Rumor has it that Francis of Assisi was someone who the conscious circle of humanity sent back into the world to inject some sanity into life. People are understanding. And yes, Ian, you are exactly right. The ultimate lineage is what you can do. And, you know, for those of us in this group who are martial artists, I mean, one of Laura's teachers was so big on lineage. He thought that if he got the right lineage, that everything would be okay. And he forgot that he was a good martial artist regardless of what anybody thought of him or who his teachers were. And it kind of ruined him. And it was very sad. So, what I am doing in this group, and when I say the work, a term which I have blatantly stole from Mr. Gurdjieff in the Fourth Way, until I come along with something better. But I like it because it's neutral, and it doesn't carry any religious connotations. If you want to be religious, be religious. If you want to be a Muslim, be a Muslim. If you want to be a Christian, be a Christian. The only thing I suggest is that you be a good one. Or if you want to just follow the scientific methods as they are taught through the conscious circle of humanity, then do that. Do both. They are not mutually exclusive. You just have to understand that there is adult religion and child religion. Child religion is what we have. I mean, yeah, I live in America, so I'm surrounded by Christians, and I see child religion all the time. God is the ultimate alpha male, and you must obey him. Michael says, be a good adult. Yes. That's exactly right, Michael. Be a good adult. So, here's the thing. The metaphors of Christianity are those of you are bad children, and because you are bad children, you were kicked out of your playroom. And if you're really, really good, Daddy might let you back into the playroom at some point. But only if you do not ever grow up. Personally, when I look at the Christian version of the, quote, fall, I see the serpent as having done human beings a favor. The apple, or the pear, or whatever it was, the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil was the fruit of the knowledge of adulthood. What happened was that they ate the fruit. They got kicked out of the garden, which is like getting kicked out of the womb. I realize that I am speaking heresy. Fortunately, I live in a place where I can get away with that. So, Scott, am I kind of answering your questions here? Is this making sense? Because, as I said, this is all Scott's fault, tonight's talk. So, if I've upset you, you have to blame him. I'm kidding, Scott, of course. Yes, Scott, that's exactly right. Aaron, you are correct. The Enneagram, which, as Mr. Gurdjieff pointed out, is the foremost tool of the path, is the way that you can plot your course to human adulthood. That's why the last Enneagram I gave you guys during the 6-week course was the Enneagram of waking up. Yeah, this is what happens when you guys ask me good questions, is I come up with good talks. That's a hint. If you want good talks, ask good questions. Otherwise, I might sit around and tell you what I did today, and that will not be nearly as interesting. I pet the dog, I sharpened a knife, I went and had breakfast out for the first time in weeks. All of these things, which are boring. Or I can talk about this stuff, which is exciting. So, the tools that I use are predominantly, though not exclusively, based in Sufi practice. But I have experienced the conscious circle of humanity in several different places around the world and in several flavors. I spent time in India studying Kashmiri Shivaism under an enlightened teacher. I mean, this guy was as clear a light as I have ever seen. I have experienced this in the southwestern United States amongst the native peoples. I have experienced this amongst the healers in Africa. There is nobody who has cornered the market on enlightenment. There is no one culture that has more of this than any other. You find where you're comfortable and you go there. My not comfort zone, because the Sufi path has been oftentimes anything but comfortable, but what has resonated for me is that as the way that I could best understand it. And I understand that the scientific part of it has nothing to do with the religious part of it. They coexist quite nicely in some places. And frankly, and this might upset some of you too, frankly, the religion part of it has wiped out the scientific part of it in a lot of places. My teacher used to say, amongst other things, that he kept me around because I knew everybody in the spiritual world, which was true. I had my first teacher in the early 70s, and I stayed with him until he died. And then I did not have a teacher for years. I just floated around from group to group and hung out with people who interested me and learned from them. And some people wanted me to be their student, but I never was. I was not their student, and I did not take another teacher for 25 years, something like that. Sorry, I was just missing my first teacher there for a moment. He was a remarkable man, murdered by the Ayatollahs during the Iranian Revolution. according to this, I'm getting some dropped frames. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Hopefully you guys are getting a fairly decent audio, if not a totally perfect video, because the audio is more important. I mean, yes, I am distinguished looking and everything, but you all know what I look like. So, the path that I am charged to teach, and I say charged to teach because my teachers, specifically one lineage of them, has said, do this, is one that is not religious in the sense of wanting you to follow any particular religious tradition. It is purely scientific. And you don't need religion to do science. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully I'm asking or answering your questions about the work and Sufism and Islam. I personally think that if you're going to do a religion, you could do a lot worse than Islam. I have been a practicing Muslim for decades. Maybe not the best one, but, you know, when somebody says, what's your religion? You know, it's still, I'm a Muslim. And if I were a Buddhist, or if I were a Christian, or if I were a Pastafarian, the science would still be the same. So, the work that I am initiating here is a work of science, and it is a work of waking up in the world and then waking up from the world, in that order. And anybody is welcome to join in on this work, regardless of what other things that you do, because it's not exclusive. This is not an exclusive club. This particular club allows anybody to join, as long as you're not an asshole. We have a no asshole clause, but not a really big one, because obviously I'm here. All right, questions. This is me reading my tablet to see if anybody has any amazing questions to ask me. And if you don't have a question, I'll go right to the commercials. We have commercials now. The most important commercials, since I have... we have a question. Are there any well-known teachers within any other religions? Yes, there are good teachers who are religious and non-religious. I can think of half a dozen of them. One of my favorites is a Buddhist Hindu kind of guy, goes by the handle of Adyashanti. He is definitely a fully awake human being, in my opinion. When I experience him as being as awake as you get. That Vietnamese Buddhist teacher, whose name I always forget, is also quite awake. There are modern teachers like Byron Katie's work is superb. I have never met her, but I consider her as very probably a completely awake person. Not my work, but it's good work. God, who else? Eckhart Tolle, for God's sakes. Obviously an awake human being. again, not my work. Here's the thing. Just because you're awake doesn't mean what you have is for everyone. Tole puts me to sleep. I can't even listen to him. I hear him, and when I hear him, I realize him as a realized being, and his work does not resonate with me. So, yeah, awake people are around. You don't notice it until you start waking up yourself. And as Rumi said, there would be no fool's gold if there weren't real gold somewhere. Nancy Lebowitz says, I recognize the value of the work, but I have a very hard time getting myself to do anything. What might help? Nancy, send me a private message. Yes. So, all right, commercials. First of all, the Ultimate Enneagram course. If you have not taken this course, you should take this course, because this course will change the way you work in the world. It is, in fact, a tool that is incredibly useful for waking yourself up and living in the world awake. You can build a house without a hammer, right? But having that hammer can be a really useful way to speed up the process. And the Enneagram is a really good hammer. It's an excellent tool. The Ultimate Enneagram course is something that I'm actually proud of. You know, it's good work. So, yes, as Michael says, go to ultimateenneagram.com, buy the course. Buy the course even if you took the course. Buy the course and give it to a friend. Unless you hated the course, then buy the course and give it to an enemy. Seriously. If you didn't like the course, give it to a bunch of people you don't like as Christmas presents. It'll drive them crazy. But I'm being a little facetious there, but only a little. It is a very, very useful, powerful tool, and it is a tool that I work with extensively when I work with people. And that's the other thing. I still have a couple of slots open for my special of getting to talk with me personally and have me work with you. And let me tell you, this is, if you want to accelerate your work, then one-on-one work is the way to do it. I may or may not be the person who can help you, but if it sounds like this work resonates with you, take me up on that, because even in 4 or 6 sessions, we can get you started with your practices and talk through your experiences and get you firmly established within the work. And then it's kind of up to you what you do. So there is that. And if that is something that interests you, just send me a private message and we will set it up. I'm looking to fill all of the slots that I have, and it will be very interesting to talk with some of you. I have some of you already signed up. What else do we have for commercials? Ultimate Enneagram. Buy that course. You will be happy you did. Grab one of the 2 slots I have left for either 4 weeks or 6 weeks, or 4 sessions or 6 sessions. The sessions do not have to be done weekly. You can spread them out. If you get 6 sessions, you can do them once a month. I don't mind. It's whatever works for you. And what else? Yes. Communicate with me your thoughts and ideas, and let's see if I can get one of you to give me next week's topic. Or you might end up giving me the next 10 weeks' topics. It is more fun for me to actually work with things that are interesting to you, because if I'm just working with things that are interesting to me, I already know that. So, there we have it. An hour's worth of talking at you. As always, it is both a pleasure and a privilege to be able to communicate with this group. I will also be doing more of the private talks as time goes on over on the Nine-Sided Circle forum. It's a closed forum, so only members get to see the talks. And so if you've been listening in here and you want to get into slightly more deeper stuff, go over and join that forum. I'll probably let you in, you know? And so, that's all I got for tonight. Remember, there are lots and lots of people out here doing this work. Just because I'm doing it doesn't mean that I have a corner on the market. I've mentioned a few other names of people who I consider seriously good teachers in the world. And that's a very, very small list compared to the teachers who were actually out there. Yeah, and thank you, Scott, for putting up with my teasing you about the question. You are a very good sport about that, and I really appreciate that. And it is my hope to see you all this next Sunday, because good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be back. Yeah, with apologies to Tennessee Ernie Ford. I just dated myself again. All right. Take care, and